Hey there, it's Oliver here. Before I actually get into this video, I just really quick wanted to basically say what this video actually is. So if you're not familiar, I'm the founder of Lucrum Ads, which is a company that helps gyms all over the world basically grow their gyms and get more clients and more members. And one of the ways that we obviously do this is via optimizing and improving their sales, or more specifically, the sales of the gym owner or whoever it is doing the sales. And one of the ways that we do this is through a basically online course that we give every single one of our clients free of charge. This is the first video of that course, and it covers basically all the fundamentals of not just selling fitness, but selling high ticket or long term or both packages, so you can basically get the most guaranteed revenue later down the line for your gym. But with that being said, if you were interested about how me and my company can help grow your gym, first link in the description, book a call with me, check it out if you're interested. But if not, enjoy the video, and importantly, I hope you get some value out of it. Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to the first module of this mini course, The Art of Selling Sales. Now, the reason I've created this mini course is simply because working with many gyms all over the world during my time running this business, I've noticed that some gyms are able to sell at ridiculously high rates, 80, 90%, whereas others are just not capable of getting anywhere near to it. So in this course, I've basically put together what all of my best clients that are able to sell at those 80, 90% conversion rates are doing, and hopefully I'll be able to teach you how to do the same. So let's get into it. In this first video, we're going to cover the fundamentals behind converting a total stranger into a high or one of your highest paying clients, the science of a high sales rate and why that's actually important to know, and some important things about sales that quite simply most other gyms or fitness studios are simply not doing. So let's get into it. So what are the fundamentals behind converting a total stranger into a high paying client? Why are some gyms able to convert at 80, 90% conversion rates, while others are simply stuck at 25, 30, 40, even just 50%? Well, let's get into it. So first of all, let's go over our client acquisition method again. Most of this will have already been covered in the strategy session, but I think it's just worthwhile to quickly go over it. So it all starts with a paid method, normally meta ads. After someone sees an ad and clicks on it, it takes them to a funnel or a lead form, which is basically just a fancy way of saying we collect their details. And once they demonstrate enough interest, we book that person into an appointment. Now, everything in the green there you see is covered by us, and you will never have to worry about it, which is great. But the blue will be covered by you, and it's important that you do this really well, because if you don't, you'll be leaving a lot of money on the table. Now, once someone walks into your gym to have an appointment, basically the way we structure it is you have a quick intro or a quick tour of your gym. Shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. Just show them around. This is the gym floor. Here are the changing rooms. This is where we do our classes, whatever it may be. Then, once they've had a tour, you want to get them to have a quick introduction workout. It can be literally as quick as 15 minutes, just something to get the heart rate up, get those endorphins flowing, and we'll come back to that as to why it's really important. After that, you'll have a quick consultation, anywhere from sort of 15 to 30 minutes, to basically understand why the client is basically coming into your gym in the first place, and that will allow you to close anywhere from 3 to 12-month packages, or if you're a PT gym or a classes gym, anywhere from 3 to 12 session packages, which is great. So let's actually get into it. And let's look at the science of a high sales rate and why that's actually important to know. Why do you need to understand the fundamentals behind selling people and selling people well? And the best way to start this off is by understanding, first of all, why does anyone buy a fitness service? If someone is overweight and they want to lose weight, why do they buy a fitness service? Well, you might think it's because they want to lose weight. But deep down, there's always a deeper motive behind that. So let's jump into that. So you have someone in their current situation. For the sake of this example, let's just assume they're overweight and they want to lose weight. Now, obviously, many of you watching will not be dealing with that current situation, but the fundamentals are the same. So just fill in the blanks with me here. So you have someone in their current situation. Let's assume they're overweight and they want to lose weight, but most people, as I'm sure you've experienced in your gym, might have a problem that they don't actually want to take the action to solve that problem. Now, in this situation, anyone that walks into your gym will have a current situation, and they'll be made aware of that current situation via a stimulus. It might be, for instance, using that same example of someone that's overweight, it might be that that person that's overweight tried to do some running with their kids, and after 30 seconds, they were completely out of breath. It might be that they simply just don't have the strength and mobility necessary, maybe as they're entering older age, to live an independent life. It could be anything and everything. But the important thing is that everyone that's walking into your gym will have a current situation, but that current situation will be stimulated by something or other in their life. And when that happens, they enter an agitated state. And this is basically just a fancy way of saying the prospect is in pain and they're aware that they have a painful problem. Now, this extends much broader than fitness. For example, in your own gym, it could be something like you know you need more clients for your gym, but you're not sure how to go about it. And whenever something like that happens to anyone in any aspect of life, it creates an agitated state and it creates pain. And what happens when a prospect is in an agitated state? And in this situation, they'll come across one of our ads browsing online. They'll click on that ad. They won't be put off by the font or the pictures or anything like that, because they will have given us our details, or their details rather. They will have booked in for an appointment and they will have showed up for your gym. Now, what happens when they do all those things is that it's your job to basically use yourself, your gym, and the consultation to help this person out of their agitated situation. Now, you might be thinking, well, how do we do this? Well, it's quite simple. The first step is that you use your consultation to clearly define their current state and their current situation. And again, using a random example, could be they're overweight and they want to lose weight. And it's not just because they want to lose weight. It could be because they, want to be able to keep up with their grandkids. They want to be able to live an independent life and don't want to have to go into a care home when they get older. It could simply because they just want to be more health conscious and don't want to be basically carrying around all this unhealthy weight. Because as I'm sure you know, it's never a good thing when someone is overweight. Now, once you've clearly defined that current state and that current situation, you now enter basically two separate situations. The prospect is very aware of their current state and their current situation, but importantly, they also have a clearly defined desired situation. Again, they could want to lose that weight because they want to be more agile, spend more time with their kids, live a more independent life. And you're doing all this by basically creating the separation between their current state and desired state through the use of that consultation. And once you do that, the prospect will be left with two states. On the left, there's their current state, and on the right, there's their desired state. They know they need to go on some sort of a journey and some sort of a pathway to get to that desired state, but it's your job, through the use of your consultation, to present your gym, and your offer as the bridge that prospect must cross in order to achieve that desired state. And this is really important because it's not enough to just say, look, John, you're overweight and you want to lose weight. No problem. I'll give you a workout routine and a nutrition plan. Because if John knows what he has to do, he could go to any other gym and take up any other offer and walk down that same path. But instead, what this strategy is aimed at doing is it's presenting you and your gym and your offer as not just the perfect solution, but the best possible only solution that the prospect can possibly take when it comes to achieving this outcome. And that is basically the secret and the science of converting clients at a really high rate. It's creating that separation in the prospect's mind from their current, unhappy, agitated current state to a clearly defined, desirable, basically future state and future situation. And once you've created that separation, you must position yourself and your offer as the vehicle and the bridge that prospect must cross in order to achieve the difference between those two states, in order essentially to become a better person and live a healthier life. And truly masterful salespeople know how to create this separation. They know how to get a prospect who is in an unhappy situation, in an agitated state, and have them focusing on a clearly desired future state and a future situation. Then what they do is they position themselves and their offer as the key to that desired situation. Simply put, truly masterful salespeople don't sell things. You're not selling your super clean gym. You're not selling your high-end equipment. You're not selling your super experienced university educated trainers, for instance. It's not that those things aren't important. They definitely are, and they make up the solution and the vehicle the prospect must cross. But you're not selling those things. You're selling the prospect's future. You're selling their ability to lose that weight, to live a better life, and just enjoy a higher quality of life overall. Because, as I'm sure you'd agree, being a gym owner and all, fitness and overall physical health is probably up there with maybe the top 3 most important things in anyone's life. And by positioning yourself and your offer as the bridge that prospect must cross, you're selling them a better future, not just in fitness, but in general. So now that we understand why anyone buys a fitness product, let's go over some important things that we need to keep in mind. Now, you can consume this training in give or take 2 hours, but mastery takes a lifetime. You know, if you're a gym owner, you're probably very skilled at leading workouts, leading classes, personal training, whatever it might be. But I guarantee you probably weren't born with that skill. It's something that you developed over time through passion and hard work. And sales is exactly the same. Like any other skill, mastery takes a lifetime. And if you believe that you're currently not good at sales, ask yourself this: how many sales appointments have you done? Because was I born a good salesman? Absolutely not. You know, to be honest, I'm very naturally introverted. I can very capably or very easily go a week without talking to many, many people. But I have to, or rather I have, put myself out there and become extroverted in certain sales situations. And over my sales career, not just helping gym owners, but actually helping gym owners sell their own clients, I've probably done, honestly, 600 sales calls and sales opportunities and appointments. And that experience has made me into the salesman that I am now. Now, it's important to understand that you're going to have to refer back to this training multiple times if you want to achieve mastery in sales. You very easily could, if you're, very close to achieving your goal, say you're at 70% sales rate, and you want to get to an 80% sales rate, it very well may be that simply by walking through this training once, by using the scripts that we're going to give you in the next couple of videos, you'll be able to hit that 80% and hit the numbers you want. But you need to understand, if you're far from your goal that you ideally want to hit when it comes to mastering sales, you're going to have to refer back to this training multiple times. The more times, the better. And it's important that when you basically conduct appointments and conduct sales opportunities with the prospects that walk in through your door, you need to take detailed notes and basically learn from them. You might find, for example, with the scripts that we give you, you might find that one particular question sort of leads you to lose the prospect down the line. And that's completely fine. Every gym's different, every market's different. But the point is that by taking notes and by practicing, you're going to get better and better and better. So let's go over what you should basically be preparing for your consultation. Now, first of all, it's so important. Any great salesperson will tell you this. You need to release attachment from the yes. You're not going into sales to get a new prospect over the line and get money in your account. You're doing it to basically accurately diagnose a problem. And the best way you can do this is positioning yourself less as a salesperson and, for example, more as a doctor. Now, you might be wondering what that means, so let me give you a bit of an example. When you walk into the doctor's office, say you've got a headache, you go, "Doctor, I have this headache," and before the doctor even does anything, before the doctor does a physical examination of you, before he asks you some questions, if he was to just go, "Yep, no problem, here's some pain medication," that's him not being a good doctor. Whenever you do walk into a proper doctor's office and you say, "Doctor, I've got a headache," the doctor will ask you some questions, he might do a physical examination, he'll accurately diagnose your problems and then prescribe you the solution. And sales is the exact same way. When someone walks into your gym, you need to not be focused on the yes and focused on the fact that you could be welcoming your next client on board, but you need to more be focusing on how you can accurately diagnose these clients, or rather the prospects' problems, and actually help them down the line. Following on from this note, it's important to keep your ego in check. Now, look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a big ego. I have a big ego myself, but I don't let it cloud my judgment and prevent me from getting what I want. Whenever, for example, a gym owner comes to me and is curious about how they can grow their gym, I'm never focused on, this could be another client on board. I'm focused on, look, this is a gym owner who's clearly struggling in one sense of the word or another. How can I help them live a better life and have a better gym? And sometimes the answer to that question isn't always by basically joining my agency and providing them with my service. Sometimes I have to say, look, John, maybe you just need to improve the product and the service of your gym. And when it comes to selling fitness, it's the exact same way. Some people are just not going to be a good fit for your gym. And that follows on to the next point, which is never judge the prospect in any way, especially when it comes to the scripts that we're going to give you and when it comes to asking emotional and potentially painful questions. You don't want to judge the prospect because, look, I've had it before talking not just to gym owners, but also to their prospects and their potential clients. Some people literally are in so much pain and have such a potentially painful problem that they've literally broken down and cried in front of me. And that's completely fine because that's how life is. Sometimes they just have such a painful problem and they're in such a desperate situation to solve that problem. And it's important that you never judge the prospect in any way, because if you do, your judgment will be clouded and you won't accurately diagnose the prospect's problems. And you need to understand that you and the prospect are there for different reasons. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you wanting to grow your gym and make more money and be more successful, but the prospect doesn't necessarily care about that. And that's fine. They just want to have a better existence and a more pain-free life. And you need to understand that sales is not a game. It's more about meeting people and having a heart-to-heart. It's more about understanding their problem, and it's important to sort of keep it light and keep it, a bit light-hearted, basically. You don't want to be sort of robotic and read the script off and basically have sort of no personality behind it, because as well, if you're sort of a bit more friendly, a bit more outgoing, have a bit more of a heart-to-heart, a little bit of a casual conversation perhaps, the prospect is going to feel so much more comfortable basically opening up to the real reason why they're there, the real problems and the real desires that they have. So let's go over some best practices when it comes to sales. Now, when a prospect walks through the door, like we said, you want to give them a quick tour of your facility before they start their workout. And it's super, super important to not start selling before they've had their workout. Let the prospect know that after their workout, that you can ask them some questions, you can design the best plan for them, and you can structure it as sort of like a fitness consultation. And we will go over this, or we will have already gone over this, but we'll also structure the ads in that same sort of way so the prospect knows what to expect. And after the workout, simply ask them if they enjoyed it. 99% of people will say, yes, absolutely, I loved it. If they don't, that's more of a service or a product-related problem. But generally speaking, if you've reached it this far and you're on board with our agency, we will have solved that, or rather that won't be a problem. And if you have a separate space for sales, it could be an office, it could be a quiet room, it's really worthwhile if you potentially don't have that to maybe set the budget aside and to basically just have a quiet room without noise or distractions, because it just makes it so much easier for basically the prospect to open up and relax and let their guard down a bit. If instead of having a quiet, closed-off room, if it's just in the middle of the gym floor, for instance, there's going to be eavesdroppers. It's not going to be a sort of comfortable environment, and the prospect isn't going to basically feel as comfortable opening up to you. And importantly, with that, they're not going to basically give you the required answers that you need in order to basically accurately diagnose the prospect and their problem. And likewise, it's important to basically, when you do this sales consultation, do not have any distractions. Close your laptop, turn your phone off. You're not going to be responding to emails, picking up the phone or anything like that. If you do get a phone call, just keep your phone on silent, because it's super important that 100% of your focus and attention is given towards the prospect and accurately diagnosing their problems. And following on from this, make sure you have all the forms that a prospect may need to sign for the workout. Make sure you've got all the scripts and the resources you need in order to make the sale right there. And make sure you write down all their answers. What I typically do, not only when I'm talking to gym owners, but back when I used to sell for gym owners, I'd have a little, just a notebook and pen, write down all their answers. And that's important not just to come back to and take notes to, but if the prospect sees that you're actually taking notes and you're attentively listening to them and you're writing down all your answers, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable opening up to you, because in their mind, they're going to be going, oh, wow, okay, they actually care. They're actually taking all this effort in order to understand what I'm saying to them. And again, we've already touched on this, but make sure 100% of your attention goes towards the prospect and your answers, and make them feel like you actually care about them. Because I'm sure if you're in the business of helping people live more active and healthy lives, you do care about them. And it's important to release all emotion from the day's stresses or previous appointments. If the last 3 or 4 appointments have been back to back to back no's, it's important not to let that get in your head. You need to be in a tranquil state, ready to give the prospect your full, undivided attention and help them accurately diagnose what it is that they're struggling with. So here's a very, very powerful tip, and it's something I've learned from the truly best gym owners that really master sales, and it's using silence as your secret weapon. So what is the power of silence, and how does it basically, help you sell more? Well, simply put, whenever you ask a question, for example, it could be something like, John, why have you come into the gym today? Just shut up. Ask the question and just don't speak. If the prospect is sitting there for a few seconds and they're sort of thinking about it, don't, butt in and maybe ask them a follow-up question. Even if the silence is a bit uncomfortable for you, just let them sit there and let the prospect sort of finish their muddled sentences and never speak over them. And what this actually allows you to do is when the prospect has sort of the time and the space and importantly, the comfort to think about what it is that they're going to say, they're actually going to give you more detail than they would otherwise if you were just butting in and asking them follow-up questions. Silence on your end allows the prospect to think, and they'll generally speaking give you essential clues as to where their sort of train of thought is leading, and you can use this as basically ammunition to close the sale. And silence also makes the prospect worry that their answers aren't good enough, and it flips the power to them being, the needy, troubled ones, to you just being the silent observer, listening to their problems, diagnosing their situation. And let the prospect or the person sit with the weight of their pain. Whatever you do not solve the prospect's pain or problems. If, for instance, the prospect says, again, using that same example of them being overweight, they say, oh, look, I'm just, I really need to lose this weight because I'm getting to the age where I want to live an independent life. I don't want to be in a home. I want to be able to run around with my grandkids, whatever it might be. Don't go, oh, well, no problem, John. I'll just give you a workout plan and, just eat correctly, avoid processed foods, a calorie restricted diet, and you're good as gold. Because if you say that to them, they're not going to be in pain. They're going to be, oh, well, I guess my problem doesn't really matter that much. And that's not helpful because if the prospect isn't in pain, like we've already established, they're not going to buy from your service. Or at least if they do, it's going to be nowhere near the basically 80 to 90% sales rate that we're all aiming for. And when the prospect states their current situation, pains and problems, do not jump in and start coaching or solving it. Just say, okay, John, I understand. And when your prospect has a problem, and when you ask a question that dredges up emotion and pain attached to that problem, do not solve it. Because like we've already established, if they're no longer feeling that pain, they're not going to buy from you. Just say, okay, and keep asking your questions. Write down what their answers are and let them sit with their pain and the seriousness of their situation. We're not doing this consultation to solve their problem. We're doing it to diagnose their problem. And what is the magic and basically the science behind this process? Well, as you can see from the photo, the human brain is basically not designed to multitask. When someone does multitask, their brain lights up, like is shown, and their actions get tangled with their goals, and all the processing power that goes to the front of the brain, which is responsible for switching tasks, is not focused on what their actual goal is. And in order to convert your prospect, you must work through a linear, straightforward process, which is carefully designed to trigger the right part of the brain and connect all the dots in the prospect's mind when it comes to achieving their goals and bringing clarity to their frantic and, in all honesty, painful situation. You don't want the prospect to be thinking about this, then that, and then maybe something else over there. You just want a simple, linear, straightforward process, and which importantly allows the prospect to be focused on their pain and their ultimate goal the entire time throughout the consultation. And when this is done correctly, this sales process successfully stimulates the prospect's mind and brings about a state of clarity and decisiveness so that they know they can act and make an immediate decision. And it's honestly incredibly powerful. And again, to get a little bit more into the science, that's why we get them to do the workout beforehand, not just to see how amazing your gym is, but also when their heart rate gets up, the endorphins start flowing. This is going to basically give them a heightened sense of basically action because emotions are contagious. When someone has a feel-good feeling, they're going to want more of that feeling. And when we combine that with this linear sales process, it's just going to compound and double your results really. So that is all for this video. all you can do is just go on to the next one. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you then.